Hi, Zabaya! Oh, sorry. I don't know why, but I had to do that. This is a flowchart of the scientific method. First, you have an observation or a question. Then you research the observation or question to find out all of its parts. Then you come up with a hypothesis of what it is that you are actually observing. But to be certain of what you're observing, you test it with an experiment. Then you have to determine if the experiment was a success. If it wasn't a success, then you check your setup and you redo the test. If it was a success, then you can analyze the data that you gathered and draw a conclusion from it. Then you have to question whether the results that you got aligned with your hypothesis or not. If they didn't, then all the data you just collected just becomes research material for a new hypothesis. However, if your results did align with the hypothesis, then you can communicate your results. Flat earthers, however, do their scientific method like this. They have an observation or a question. Then they find every possible excuse as to why they don't have to actually perform any experimentation by claiming that everybody lies to them. And as a result, even though they have no proof of it, they claim that the Earth is flat and they communicate that result. Just recently, I came up with 3 hypotheses, all surrounding one particular observation. One of the hypotheses has to do with the observation itself, and the other 2 are actually tests of what is told to us about the globe model. So yes, I'm actually doing one test based on a flat Earth hypothesis to check and see if it's correct, and 2 other ones checking on the globe. So let's walk this through. If you've been around flat Earth long enough, you've seen at least one time this video. It's called the Dogcam video. The Dogcam video was launched from northern Germany. Now, I've already done a research video on this to find out exactly what is being seen. In the Dogcam video, the reflections below the sun are happening on the Baltic Sea, just north of Poland. At no time in recorded history was the sun ever directly above Europe. However, that doesn't stop flat earthers from making that claim. Flat earthers like to say that the sun is directly above the Earth's surface in this point, causing this so-called hotspot, refusing to acknowledge that that is actually water and it doesn't fit their claim. Now, without acknowledging what was actually being tested, I recently requested the help of anybody in the Eastern Hemisphere on the 19th of April to film the sun in a way that I could tell the time and at least the azimuth from a public location in their area. I ended up with a collection of a total of 31 videos, 2 of which were mine. Unfortunately, I had to reject 2 of them, one because it wasn't exactly in the format that I requested, therefore it wouldn't be fair to use, and the second looked like it was actually filmed at somebody's residence, and while I find people's privacy to be important, I decided not to use it. The one from South Africa was also difficult to determine any landmarks surrounding the footage. One other one was actually filmed outside of the time period that I wanted to use, but it was filmed correctly and we can use it just as a piece of information to add to the results of the test. Where was the sun during this particular event? It is a natural fact that there is only one sun. It is also a natural fact that every year on the same calendar date, the sun will rise, traverse, and set within 1 degree of any other similar day during any other year. This means you can perform an annual test and compare the results. On the 19th of April, 2011, the Dogcam video was shot. So using the data collected by all those who participated, we will find out if the azimuths of their sun corroborate the location of the claimed sun in the Dogcam video by flat earthers. Let's take a look at that data. This is Google Earth looking over Europe. Let's take away all the borders and text so it doesn't look confusing. These are the azimuths from their viewpoints of where the sun was this past 19th of April, within the time frame that the Dogcam video displayed its times. The Dogcam balloon was launched from here. At 4:38 UTC, or 6:38 local, this was the direction that the sun was. The blue line represents the direction that the sun was observed. At 5:11 UTC, or 7:11 local time, the Dogcam saw its first hotspot, as claimed by flat earthers, a reflection on water. The blue line represents the direction that the sun was from the launch point, and the small sun that I drew would have to be where the sun was directly over its reflection, according to flat earthers. At 6:13 UTC, or 8:13 local time, the blue line now represents the azimuth of the sun, and where the sun would have had to have been to create a hotspot directly below it. However, this hotspot on the Baltic Sea is happening over North Poland. Now here's all the data, as well as all the labels, of everybody who participated. Well, not really everybody. The green line coming in from the right is actually the view azimuth from Australia, and the view azimuths from Japan, Vietnam, Thailand, and the Philippines didn't even make it to Europe. As a matter of fact, most of them shot straight down into the southern hemisphere. Were the sun over North Poland and the hotspot claimed true, then all of these lines would generally intersect over North Poland, to include those from Australia, Japan, Vietnam, Thailand, and the Philippines. So back to the scientific method. Was the test a success? Of course it was. All data acquired, all data was analyzed, and could be accurately mapped out. So I'm able to move on to analyzing the data and drawing a conclusion. And the conclusion is that the sun was not over North Poland, nor has it ever been, to create a quote-unquote hotspot directly below it, as claimed by flat earthers. So with 100% certainty, I can say that the hotspot claim of flat earth is false. So if the hotspot claim were actually fact, then what you are seeing in this picture is actually the sun over Thailand, thereby also destroying the how far can you see claim. The second hypothesis is born of a preemptive question that I was anticipating from flat earthers and is testing the globe. This line represents where on Earth you could actually observe the sun directly overhead at solar noon on the 19th of April. So a question becomes, these lines that I drew across the surface, the 40,075 kilometer stated circumference of the Earth, none of these lines is allowed to exceed 10,000 kilometers. At maximum, 1/4 of the stated circumference of the Earth. Otherwise, by way of simple geometry, the sun would actually be obscured by the horizon. And this geometry does not take into account refraction, and it will not need to. The longest line that was drawn here was from Luke Vader His line was 9,788 kilometers long to the subsolar point. The shortest one is from Coon Ridge, which was only 329 kilometers long. Now, a supplemental piece of information to this is the longer the line was, the lower the sun was on the horizon. This corresponds with every bit of video footage that was submitted, and not one of these locations was beyond the 10,000 kilometer breaking point. And now, using that same line and the UTC times of each of the observations, let's see how close to sequential order this would have tracked the sun. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play the long lines and their cross points in order to find out if that order also follows the track of the sun. In this case, it would be a consistent movement from east to west. So there you have it. The sun moved consistently from east to west per the azimuths provided in the 29 used observations, which is also another test which corroborates and thereby also confirms the globe model. And since people want to nitpick, let me just add this in here. This test was performed as a blind test. Only I knew what was being tested. That way, people either good or bad intentioned could not skew the results of the test. It's a very simple concept. It avoids bias. As some would like to argue, where is the independent variable? The independent variable in an experiment is something which can be changed in an observation while or during the observation to arrive at the cause of the observation. With a test such as this, as with all landscape or celestial body observations, the tester cannot reasonably change the positions of the objects being observed. One cannot reposition the sun, buildings, landscape, or mountains at will. So the only independent variable that's usable in this, and is also the basis for the entire test, is the location of the observer themselves. Changing the viewing angle, similar to changing the observer's height from a low angle and a high angle, that would be your independent variable. Down below in the description, I have all of the data that I worked with, every last bit of it. I have the locations where the people were standing. This is also why I wanted people to do it in a public location. I have the azimuths of the short observation, and then the extensions, and then the subsolar line, and the cross points. You can review them if you wish. Earth's a globe, per the scientific method, which also corroborates with nothing from flat Earth. Y'all have a nice day.
Oh my God.